Hello, everyone. This is D Nice over here at the Printed Word Bookstore in Portsmouth, VA, and welcome to yet another episode of Bookstore Shenanigans. On today's episode, we're still in Black History Month. It is still February 2026, and so our sign currently says Celebrate Black History Month with books, and so that is exactly what we're going to do today. So the last episode, we talked about W.E.B. Du Bois. Now I know you actually pronounce the S, so living and learning, I learned something already. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about Sojourner Truth. I apologize if I mispronounce yet another name that I've mispronounced all my life, but that is how I think it is said, Sojourner Truth. So I am really excited about this. This should not take that long because I'm only going to talk about the introduction. I don't have enough time to read all of these while I am on the clock because I am actually working, but this is part of my work today, and I read just the introduction, so I'm just going to briefly touch upon the introduction of this particular book, which is part of our Black History Month collection. All the books that we have, they're in the same set, in the same style. They're all $10. We have a nice little display at the front. But today, I'm excited to talk about Sojourner Truth. Once again, like I said, I only read the introduction. So what I know about Sojourner Truth is very, very, very basic, very, very, very minimal. But I'm already very, 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 very impressed. Okay, guys? So basically, she was very instrumental in the abolitionist movement and women's rights movement. So she is very, 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 very smart and very, 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 very important. And in the introduction, it's basically about the Aren't I a Woman speech that she did at a convention for women's rights. So there is a convention happening for women's rights, and it's at a church. And typically, there was just a bunch of men coming to a lot of these conventions for women's rights. And this particular convention was overseen by a woman, which was nice. And basically, it was just a free place for people just to speak their opinion about it. So some people would stand up and speak for it. Other people would stand up and speak against women's rights. And so it wasn't like all for women's rights. It was whatever position you had, that is what you stood up and you spoke about. Most of the people speaking were men. They were a lot of clergymen and ministers spoke out. So one sidebar that I took away from this is that when you have presence, when you really obtain presence, Sojourner, look at her. She had presence. And so when she stepped foot through those doors, everybody noticed. Everybody recognized. Wait a second. Who is that? Oh my goodness. So much so that there were some men who went to the person who oversaw the meeting and were like, whatever you do, don't let her speak. Don't let that woman speak. They were just so adamant about not letting her speak because, once again, this is about women's rights, but she's very prominent when it comes to Black rights as well. Equal rights for men and women, for all people. And so they were just like, whatever you do, don't let her speak because it's going to be horrible. She's going to get us off track and it's going to be horrible consequences, right? But the person who resided over this, what was her name? Frances Gage, I think was her name. She did not listen to those men, thankfully. And so, basically, I'm going to give you guys my first sidebar and then my main takeaway from this introduction about Sojourner Truth. My first sidebar is the fact that she could neither read nor write. And yet, she became a published author. What? Can't rewind. I read that and was like, wait a second. Did you just start with she could neither read nor write? But at this convention, she was selling copies of her book. Like the narrative of Sojourner Truth. Like what? It says right here. I'm going to read a little excerpt. During the intermission, the Black woman walked among the conventioneers, offering to sell them copies of her book entitled The Narrative of Sojourner Truth. Although she could not read or write, the woman had produced an account of her life by dictating her personal history to a friend. Guys, you have literally no excuse. You have no excuse. I have no excuse. We have no excuse, okay? This woman could neither read nor write and became a published author by dictating her story to her friend. Like, enough said, guys. We have to stop like making excuses for why we can't do things, why we don't have the ability to do things, and start focusing on, if I want to get this thing done, I'm going to get the thing done. I'm going to figure it out. It's going to happen. Guys, right here, you can't tell me nothing. You ain't got no excuses. Right here, you ain't got no excuses. You can't tell me nothing. So that was my first like sidebar takeaway of, this woman could neither read nor write, and yet she had the ability to become a published author, step into this convention and start selling her books, her narrative that she dictated to her friend. And you can't write that book. You can't publish that poetry. You can't write those essays. No excuses, guys. Remove the excuses. Okay. So next, and I'm going to wrap this up so that this episode is done. The biggest takeaway I had was, during this convention, like I said, you could either like defend and be for women's rights, or you could be against women's rights. And so there were several individuals that are mentioned specifically in the introduction who were against women's rights for several different reasons. I think they mentioned they were all four of them were ministers. And so in this introduction, in this speech, Aren't I a Woman?, she refutes every last one of their claims as to why women were not equal to men and could not obtain rights. But there was one instance in particular. I'm not going to go through all the ones that she refuted, because you can just look that up yourself. Just look up Aren't I a Woman by Sojourner Truth. But there was one that I read that I was like, dang, oh my goodness, she flame roasted him. Get the extinguisher. Get the extinguisher. He's on fire. Because, man, did she get this dude. So I'm going to read this one. So for context, like I said, Sojourner Truth could neither read nor write, and yet she was a woman of the word, as in the Bible. She knew the Bible inside and out, even though she could not read or write. That's your context going into this. And this is a minister saying this at the convention. So next came the minister who had stated that women must be inferior because God had made Jesus a man. Where did your Christ come from? This is Sojourner Truth. Truth asked him. The minister did not answer her, so she asked the question again and then answered herself. From God and a woman. Man had nothing to do with him. I was like, dang, son. Dang, son. Flame roasted him. Flame roasted him. Oh my goodness. But it's such an example of like a thing in history, and even modern history right now, of people taking the Bible out of context, and they're using it for their own purposes to justify their own like fleshly, worldly opinions. And it just makes it so apparent how important it is to know the entirety of your word. This was clearly a woman of the word. And so if you know your entire word, the entire Bible, like obviously you don't have to memorize it word for word, but you have to get through that thing again and again and again and again, and just constantly be in the word to be able to refute things in which people are taking scripture out of context. The devil tempted Jesus with scripture, guys. And so I was just like, when I saw her refute that, man, I was like, oh my goodness. That's all I read in the introduction. After that, I'm like, I'm done. I can't read any more of this. But at the same time, I was like, I gotta know more about this woman. How can you read that and not be like, I gotta know more about this woman? So, like I said, here it says that she was an anti-slavery activist, also very prominent figure for women's rights. Sojourner Truth. This is your Black History Month little tidbit here that we have here at the Printed Word. I might actually read a little bit more of this one, to be honest, because I was just like the whole time. But I hope you guys are enjoying this series for Black History Month. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Bookstore Shenanigans. This is, once again, your local bookstore clerk, D Nice, over here at the Printed Word Bookstore in Portsmouth, PA. Hope you guys have a wonderful, beautiful, blessed day. And until next time, all to say is goodbye, y'all.